Hi, this is Marsha.
And this is Kelly.
We are the two Ewes of Two Ewes Fiber Adventures. Thanks for stopping by.
You'll hear about knitting, spinning, dyeing, crocheting, and just about anything else we can think of as a way to play with string.
We blog and post show notes at twoewesfiberadventures.com.
And we invite you to join our Two Ewes Fiber Adventures group on Rambouillet. I'm 100 Projects.
And I am Better in Motion.
We're both on Instagram and Rambouillet, and we look forward to meeting you there.
Enjoy the episode. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Marsha.
We're actually talking.
I know, it's been so long. I've been off the air for way too long. When I was making the show notes, I had all this stuff to talk about.
Well, we have talked, but this is our first time in a while recording together.
Yeah. It's been, I think, since the beginning of January, the first part of January. So, anyway, I'm glad to be back. Not that I had actually gone anywhere, but I'm glad to be back on the podcast. Although it is fun to edit the ones that you do from elsewhere, where I get to listen to it and put the podcast together and hear all about where you're going and stuff. So,
and all the Arctic char that I ate.
Yes, all that Arctic char.
So if you don't know what we're talking about, you'll have to go back and listen to the Iceland dispatches. So
yeah.
Anyway, well, I think before we get into any knitting or stitches, we have to talk about the new edition.
Yes, my newest project.
Yes.
Her name is Bailey. She's a German Shepherd, and she's just about turning a year old this month. They don't know exactly how old she is because she was a shelter dog. And when she arrived at the shelter, she was so wary of people that she didn't let anyone come near her. The staff couldn't get close to her, pet her, work with her. I mean, they couldn't even get near her to work with her. So she was not going into the part of the shelter where she would have been able to be adopted. But she got picked up by a rescue organization that we have in our area, and they've put her into a foster home at a boarding kennel. So she was at the foster home of the boarding kennel from August until when we got her in January. So that's quite a long time.
Yeah,
to be in a boarding kennel. So she had some significant challenges, we thought, when we got her, but she's done really, really well. She's a lot of fun. She's a funny dog. Mm-hmm. She has, it's fun to have a young dog in the house, I have to say. Nash, who is walking around, you might be able to hear his little toenails on the floor. He's fun too, but he's 13. And so, and then, we had Rudy, but she was also elderly. She was 14. So it's been a long time since we've had a young dog in the house, and it's really, really fun. So, yeah.
Well, and I met her when people know I came down for the Stitches West show. And so I was down with you. We were together for about a week, I think. And I was at your house maybe 5 days or so before we left for Stitches. And we took her on a long walk. And she has lots of stamina, which is good for all the training that you've been doing.
Yeah.
And she's just a really good dog. It feels like she's fit in really well into the house. And she does seem really playful.
Yeah.
And funny. And I think, right now we had a lot of conversations about what you're doing to show her kind of what the rules are in the house. And one of the things that she's on the leash most of the time next to you. So she's really bonded with you because, if I would be sitting up in the sunroom and we would tell her to sit, down, stay, and you would go do something, she wouldn't get up, but she was on alert. Where are you? And when are you coming back?
Yeah.
On alert kind of. And then sort of she would like relax when you came back into the room. So she's really, which is really good that she's bonded very much with you.
Yeah,
And
I was a
Robert,
little
too, but-
concerned that she would have a hard time bonding because she was so wary of us when we went to visit. We went to visit, I guess when we recorded the last time together, we had been, we knew we were on the list to get her, but I didn't know we were going to actually be able to get her, so I didn't talk about it. But we went to see her every day for a week before, because she was we were unable to adopt her because she still had stitches and she had to get her stitches out. She had a little accident while she was at the boarding kennel that required stitches. So, anyway, we just kept going back every day, but every day Aunt Betty would say, well, does she, was she excited to see you? And it was like, no, she wasn't excited to see us. She doesn't want to come near us. She didn't really, exhibit any interest in coming over to us. And then after the first few days, I just had them deliver her to us on leash, so that she didn't really have the choice to run away. And more so that she could break the habit of running away, because it looked kind of to me like it was a habit that she had. And so I was like, okay, let's break this habit. Let's not have this habit get established that she runs away. And so then, once she was on leash with us, she would walk on the leash nicely. She would allow us to pet her. She would take treats. But without being on the leash, she would run. And so... So, they suggested that we keep her on leash for at least the first month. And it's been a month, but she's still mostly on leash in the house. I'm not always holding the leash now. Yeah. But I'll tell you, one of the things that having the leash on does is it's meant I haven't had to dog-proof the house. And the few times that I have left her unattended, she has done naughty things. Like last night, she got my braid from Shaky K Fibers that I got at Stitches and took some of it apart. So if I had plans to spin it a certain way, that, shall we say, is no longer possible. I can't just split it into parts and spin it as a fractal or something so well organized as that. But she has not gotten into a lot of trouble because she hasn't been able to get into a lot of trouble. And so that's been kind of a management issue. And then I have to start getting serious about putting my stuff away and deciding, what's going to stay out and what's too precious to risk. And, so that's one of the things I'm going to do this weekend. So I can see that that's going to be an issue, but it hasn't been too much of a problem. Yeah. Because it hasn't, she hasn't had the opportunity. But the other issue, and I think this is a kind of a funny story. The other issue is that she'll go willingly into her crate. She does just fine in the crate. In fact, she's in the crate right now. But as soon as she feels like no one's here and she's in the crate, she goes crazy. And by crazy, I mean, well, the first time we didn't know how she was, and she managed to, with her paws, push down the lever on the crate from the inside to get the top part open, and then she was able to pop the bottom part of the crate open, and so she was just loose. She got out. So that was the first time she got out. So then we strapped it with a bungee cord, and she was able to still undo the crate door, and then she squeezed out, even though it was bungeed. And she's done that now with 2 separate kinds of bungee cords. She's been able to squeeze herself out. So every time she does that, she's reinforced, right? She gets a reward for all this problem solving that she's doing in the crate. Anyway, she's now broken out of the crate 4 times. And I go into the bedroom, and here's the crate closed and bungeed. and here she is out of the crate. It's like she's magic. I don't know how she does it, but yeah, and I think that's how she was injured, was doing some kind of antics like that. I mean, you could imagine how you could get a gash in your side trying to squeeze out of a crate through a bungee cord. So anyway, I was talking about this problem. So not only does she try to escape, but she howls and makes all kinds of noise, and is just, generally difficult to listen to. Poor Aunt Betty downstairs in her bedroom, she's not enough of a, she's enough far away that it feels like nobody's in the house, but she has to listen to it.
Yeah.
So anyway, someone at Stitches said, well, why don't you put the radio on for her? And I said, well, I did, but she somehow, knows that the radio.
She's smart that she knows it's the radio and not real people.
Yeah, yeah. And then they said, oh, you should play your podcast. So on Monday, Wednesday night, I have a night class. And so last night I had to put her in the crate and go off to my night class. And so, I always try to give her exercise before, and I fill the Kong with cheese or peanut butter. Someone suggested freezing it, so we've tried that. And I come home to a Kong that's barely touched, and she's been trying to throw herself at the door to get out. Anyway, last night I did all that, gave her exercise, gave her the Kong, closed the crate door, bungeed, wired, did all the stuff that needed to be done to keep her from breaking out. And then I put on the podcast on the computer. And I put it in the spare bedroom and went downstairs. Well, she could hear me downstairs getting ready to leave. And so I guess, I don't know, she started howling. And I thought, okay, so this is probably not going to work. But you know what? She hears me upstairs from the computer, but she hears me walk downstairs. So I thought, okay, I need to be a little smarter than this. So I take the computer downstairs and I put it in the living room, and I turn it up a little bit more so it's a little bit louder. And then I quietly sneak out of the house so she hopefully can't hear me. And Betty said she was quiet for the whole time Aunt Betty was here while I was at work. And when I walked up to the door, there was none of the howling, yowling, and noise that had been there. So I think maybe she likes listening to the podcast. We'll see if it works. If it works more than once.
Well, and she's so smart, though. I'm wondering if she is going to realize, hey, they're talking about the same thing again.
Well, we have
that's the third night they've been talking about the same thing.
We have 131 episodes.
Yeah, really, so. That's true.
So I could start her at the beginning. And maybe by the time she realizes, by the time we get to the end of the 131 episodes and it's a repeat, she'll have learned how to be quiet in the crate.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, she's been really fun. She has remarkably few problems, I would say, considering her background. The crate problem is one, but it's, the rest of her seems to be developing pretty normally. So I'm excited to start obedience class next week.
Well, I think she's a very sweet girl. She reminds me a lot, even though she's a German Shepherd and Enzo is a standard poodle. She reminds me a lot of Enzo. Kind of always has that kind of worried look on her face, Enzo always looks worried. And I think she moves a lot like him. We had him when I was down there. It was at night, and you put the Robert's headlamp, because he always wears a headlamp when he goes out in the evening to air the dogs. And so, but you put the headlamp around her neck, and we just let her run through the yard at night. Oh my gosh, fast.
Yeah.
And very accurate too in her cornering.
Yeah, unlike a lab who, if they're running really fast straight at you, you have to be careful.
Yes.
they might miss.
Yeah.
And you might go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is accurate. Yeah. And she's one thing that she has progressed to the point where she can be off leash in the backyard when the chickens are in, because she does come back, which is good. She has, she has broken that behavior of running away most of the time. Yeah. Occasionally she feels a little bit too much pressure and she runs away, but most of the time she's pretty good. So,
well, I was impressed. And then also, when I was down there and when you eat dinner, the dogs have to stay on their pillows in the entrance hall. And she did pretty good job. I mean, there's a couple times where she would get up and you would just go put her back on the pillow. But I was impressed that in the 4 weeks, that she's doing a really good job staying on the pillow and out from underfoot when you're in the kitchen cooking, in the kitchen you're cooking, you put her on you just had her on the leash on the door handle. But and then she did a really good job when we were sitting up in the sunroom, staying put, and out in the garden when she would sort of wander off and you would call her back. She did a good job of coming back or ignoring something, wanting the chickens. I know.
Yeah.
She did a good job.
She really wants to go by the chicken tractor and harass them. Yeah. Yeah,
so she's doing really good.
She's got some impulse control started, and she's able to kind of keep her mind, except when she's alone in the crate.
Yeah,
then she loses her mind a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing about her appearance is that she's a very nice looking dog, but it's her ears, and I guess all German Shepherds have ears like this, but they're huge and they just stick straight up. And like I would watch her when she was sitting in the sunroom and she'd just be laying there, but the ears are constantly like moving. They're like
antenna,
it reminds me of like antenna, or reminds me of like a satellite dish, that keeps tracking the I don't know what it's satellites, I guess, right? And so that's what it kind of reminds me. Her ears are always kind of moving. And again, we were laughing that because her ears are so large that she's probably can hear what's happening on Mars.
Right.
Yeah, she has magnificent ears.
She's a really different dog for us. We haven't not ever had a German Shepherd, so there's going to be a learning curve for us for sure. But it's been fun so far. So yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about our knitting projects, Marsha.
Okay. So I'm going to go first because I don't have very many, and because we've not recorded for a while. You've been busy. So I'm just going to say very quickly, I finished the pullover that I was working on. I took it to Iceland to work on, but I really only knit on it in the evenings. I didn't take it on the bus with me, but it's called Seven Sisters and by Sarah Pope. And I'm using the Baa Ram Ewe Dovestone. And it's a great sweater. It fits perfectly. It is a bottom-up sweater, and we've talked about this before, that you knit the body up to the armholes, set that aside, knit each sleeve, and then attach those to the body, and then knit the yoke. And I did what I did is, and I do this with all the bottom-up sweaters that I've done, is I do a provisional cast on at the cuffs, or up a little bit from the cuffs. I figure out how much I need sort of right before I start doing increases, and I keep track of that, and then do all my increases, and then attach it to the body, do the yoke, and finish the neckline and bind off. Finish all that because I think you get a better idea of how it's going to fit. And then when I try it on and you help me measure, I figure out now how long I have to knit the sleeves down. So then pick up those stitches from the provisional cast on and knit the cuff down. And this sweater, I have to talk about this, Kelly, is that the hem, you do a tubular cast on, which makes a really nice edge. There's no line. Sometimes, with a cast on, you get that line. Yeah. There's no line. But because of doing a provisional cast on first and then knitting down, I can't do a tubular cast on, obviously, right?
Right.
So, but you can do a tubular bind off. And Kelly, you were very helpful when I was down there. I finished the sleeves at your house, and I was watching a YouTube video about tubular cast off or cast off.
Yeah.
Could not understand it at all until you pointed out that it's really, you're doing a Kitchener stitch. And so what you had me do is take 2 circular needles and put all the knit stitches on one needle and all the purl stitches on the other needle. So you have them parallel to one another, and then do a tubular cast off.
Yeah, which is just the Kitchener.
No, I'm sorry. I would say a Kitchener stitch.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes the tubular bind off, and it is a really nice finish.
Yeah, it was the way that, I think it was the way that it was described when I did the falling water, running water. I can't remember, the cashmere sweater that I made was when I had to do that. And I had to do it for the whole front band and neck. And it took a long time to get all my stitches lined up the right way, to get the stitches from one needle onto 2 needles to do that Kitchener. But boy, was it worth it, because it made it a lot easier.
Yeah, much easier to do than the way they were describing in the video. I could not wrap my head around it.
I just remember the second video you looked at, and they were like, okay, so this sounds really hard. So first you're going to, but it's not bad, really. There's only 4 steps. So first we have to do the setup, and then it talked about what the setup was. And then it's like, okay, now here are the 4 steps. And then the first step was so long. Yes. And then the second step was even longer.
I know.
And then it's like, okay, just bear with us because there's only 2 more steps. I'm like, oh my God.
Yes. And I remember thinking, I think I said out loud, oh no, that's not going to work.
Oh my gosh.
But so I really like the sweater, and I'm wearing it now, and it fits great.
It's really good looking.
It's really good looking, and I really like the yarn too. I bought this yarn. Well, Ben's 22, and he was taking driver's ed because he drove me to Tolt over in Carnation to buy this yarn. So that's, I don't know.
I don't remember.
6 years ago? Probably
yeah,
6 years,
it was a
6,
while.
It
was
a while ago.
It was during the time we had the podcast, so it wasn't.
Yeah.
So he wasn't 16.
Yeah.
When he did it, because I think we did have the podcast, because I remember you talking about getting the Bad Mother of the Year award.
yes.
For having your son miss school to take you to the yarn crawl.
Yes. Yeah. But I don't regret it, because I still remember that day, and he's not going to remember going to school that day.
Right.
So
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But you can go back and listen to that podcast, because we talk about that. But what I was going to say, though, about the name of the pattern, Seven Sisters, I thought okay, I need to go back and take astronomy, because I thought, why is it called Seven Sisters? And I thought, the only thing I could think of is, aren't the all women's colleges that are back on the East Coast, aren't those referred to as the Seven Sisters?
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that must be what it refers to. And so there's going to be 7 stars on the yoke. Well, I make mine, the size I have actually has 10 stars, because the larger your yoke, the more stars you're going to have. And then someone pointed out to me the Seven Sisters are a constellation, which makes sense that there's stars on my yoke. Duh. Can you hear the gears in my brain slowly cranking to an understanding? So yeah, someone had to point that out to me, and then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Anyway,
it's really pretty.
I really like it.
A gray green. It's a really nice gray green color.
Mm-hmm.
And the yarn is really silky, and it fits really well.
And the interesting thing about the color is that sometimes I look at it, it looks very blue-gray, and then sometimes I was like, oh, that's green. Mm-hmm. It changes in the light. It's an interesting yarn. But anyway, then the other project I've been working on is a shawl called Dusk Into Twilight by Rosemary Hill, and I'm using our yarn. It's fingering weight, the Replenish Rambouillet, and I have 3 colors that you dyed, Kelly. There's Bourbon and Suede, which is kind of a rust color or a Yeah, kind of rust
Yeah,
color.
kind of a mustardy rust color.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Aquamarine, which is an aqua color, like aqua turquoise color.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one that sort of coordinates it all is called Falling Leaves, that has little bits of all those colors in it. And so it's going to be a large shawl because each skein is 500 yards. And this is, we all have our thing about knitting. One of my things is I want to be able to use up all the yarn on a project. I don't want to use half a skein.
Yeah.
So I found this shawl, and it's 3 colors, 500 yards each. So I have 1,500 yards of fingering weight yarn that I'm making this shawl out. And I'm halfway done probably on the 2 main colors, which is the Bourbon and Suede and Falling Leaves. And the Aquamarine goes in between those 2 colors until I get to the end of the shawl, and the Aquamarine is going to be a lace border. So I don't think I have too much further to go until I start the lace. Mm-hmm. But of course, it's, it gets more and more stitches the further down the shawl I get. So, and I have another row of increases that are coming up here soon. So I don't know. I'm still working on it, but it's what I cast on, I think, the night before I left for Iceland, and it's what I knit pretty much all the time we were on the bus in Iceland. I worked on that shawl.
Well, I know you were looking for something that was going to be good trip knitting, so I'm glad it ended up being that way.
Yeah. And then, I've been working on the socks where I bought the yarn at John O'Groats when we went to Scotland to the Caithness Craft Collective retreat. And I brought those with me to Iceland, but I never even opened up the project bag. And I took them with me to California, and I never opened up the project bag. So I didn't knit a stitch on those. So
these are the new version of the Pismo Beach socks.
Yes.
The very well-traveled socks.
Yes. And they haven't even been on my feet, and they're well-traveled. Yeah.
Oh
anyway,
my gosh.
But that's it for me for projects. So Kelly, how about you? Because you've been very busy.
Well, it's been a long time, right?
Yeah.
It's been almost all of January, and now most of February. So I did, on the last time I recorded with you, I was very close to finishing the crochet cardigan that I was doing, the Habitat cardigan. And I did finish it, and I was able to wear it to our first days back to school for the spring semester in mid-January. I wore it to our professional development day. It was nice and cold. I'll say that, like I like the cold weather. It was nice and cold, so I could wear my sweater. And I actually got a ton of compliments on this. I got more compliments on this sweater than I think I've gotten on most of the sweaters that I've made. And I was kind of worried that it was going to be I'm not worried. I mean, I was kind of thinking that it would be the kind of sweater that I would probably only wear at home. That it wouldn't be a sweater that would go to work with me, because it was going to be big and baggy and look like it was swallowing me kind of sweater. But it's not. It's not too big. It's not really super baggy. I think because of my size decisions, which I don't know that I would have made those same decisions if I had been thinking about it. But anyway, it fits really well. It's not too tight either. It is a roomy sweater, but it's not overly big. And it works really well with the belt, which is how I wore it to school. But you don't have to wear it with the belt. It's not one of those sweaters that like will fall off your shoulders,
right? If
you didn't have a closure on it. So anyway, it's really comfortable to wear. It's really nice and warm. It's heavy like a jacket, and I'm really happy with it. So I recommend the pattern. I did make some modifications. The pattern is free on a website, but then if you pay $2.95, you get sort of extra information about making it fit better for yourself. More sizing options. I think it's $2.95, something like that. It's not a lot. I did not pay that. I just used the free one. But I think it might be, if you're wanting to have more sizing options, I think it might be worth it might be worth paying the extra, because I did make some modifications to the size as I was going along, and it would have been easier to know ahead of time what I was going to do, not say, oh, wait, this is not quite long enough or not quite wide enough or whatever. So that's done. And then also the socks that I was originally going to nix and destash the sock gradient. I know I talked about that in one of the more recent, one of the episodes in December, my fix it or nix it, that I was going to just nix these socks. But what I did instead, once I ripped them out and wound the balls from the sock blank, I thought, you know what? This is too pretty. I am going to start these socks again with bigger number of stitches, and I'm going to make them long socks so I can, use more of the gradient, use all of the gradient. And so I basically made almost knee socks. They're not quite, they go kind of right up to the top of my calf. And they don't stay up, but that's all right. They're ribbed all the way down, which I really like ribbed socks. So I have a new pair of socks, and they're nice and long and warm and pretty. I get to see the whole gamut of their gradient, from the purple down through the dark orange, orange red to the light, like almost yellow orange. So I have
They're really pretty.
Thank you. I have a small bit left, and I have it earmarked to do some repairs on Robert's San Francisco Giants Argyle socks. So, so all that yarn is going to be used, which was something I was concerned about before. So anyway, so that was a good project. I managed to finish it. I made a hat that I don't even think I had started when we talked last. Out of my, I had a mini skein set from a door prize from the Knockers retreat from 2 years ago. And there had been sort of, I don't know if it was intentionally the gauntlet was thrown down, but somebody posted in the Knockers thread on Ravelry, is anybody knitting with their Knockers yarn? And then somebody else said, or what about something from D-Stash? And so I thought, oh, I need to get out my door prize yarn from 2 years ago and knit something. So I knitted the the sock head hat. And I made it full size, like 4 inches of ribbing and 9 inches of hat length. So it's super big and slouchy. And I really like it. I didn't use up all my yarn, so I still have some of the yarn left of the mini skein set. I was kind of surprised because I thought that the sock head hat was designed to use a skein of sock weight yarn, and I think my mini skein set was the equivalent, 100 grams, but it must have been a little bit more than a normal yardage.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is finished and has gotten several walks worth of use in the last month. So that was good. And also used in the house, right, Marsha, as you know?
Yes.
Because the house, well, you heard about the furnace back around Thanksgiving. And it got fixed, but was still on its last legs. And the motor is just so noisy and loud that we're sure it's going to just seize up at any moment. So we stopped using it. And so it's been cold in our house.
Yeah.
Really
it's very
cold.
I was going to say, Robert greeted me with a bathrobe.
Yeah.
He left the bathrobe in the guest room for me to wear, and I would wear it to dinner. I wore it to breakfast. I wore it to lunch. I wore it to dinner. The only time I didn't wear it was outside because it was actually warmer outside in the sun than it was in the house.
And today, oh my gosh, today is gorgeous. I think it's in the low 70s today. Really
nice.
Beautiful outside. But it is still, the house hasn't warmed up from being cold for the winter. So so it's still pretty cool inside the house. But anyway, the hat has gotten used at night. In the morning, I put it on if it's not on my head already. When I wake up, I put it on my head before I go downstairs. So anyway, it's already well used, and it's only a month old. And then what I'm knitting on right now, and what I have picked back up, it was languishing for a little while, but then I brought it to stitches, is the Marianne's cardigan. Except I'm not doing it as a cardigan. I'm doing it as a tee. And this is the sweater that has the crochet yoke and crochet detail. Is a short-sleeved cardigan, is the way it's designed. And it has crochet detail on the yoke and crochet detail on the sleeves. And I've actually separated for the sleeves and, cast on the stitches to make the arm hole a little bit bigger. And I don't know, maybe I will say maybe 8 inches from where I split for the sleeves. So I've got about 8 inches of the body done now. So that's really that's good. A lot of progress. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm getting more excited about getting this done because now the weather is looking nicer, and I can actually envision myself wearing it. One day it will warm up here. I know other places have had much colder weather than we have in Salinas, but this has just been a very cold February for us. Usually the President's Weekend, we get, beautiful sun and temperatures in the low 70s. And we've had temperatures in the low 60s most of February. It's just now starting to get up into the high 60s and low 70s. So anyway, I can now picture wearing a tee. There will be a t-shirt in my future. It's not all hats and robes and sweatshirts and... Yeah. There'll be a reason to wear a t-shirt. Yes. Yeah. So, and I'll be ready. It'll be done. So this is a pattern by Trina Bertelsen, and I'm trying to decide. It does not call for any kind of waist shaping, and I don't really have much of a waist, so I mean, I could definitely do it, without any decreases, waist decreases. But I'm thinking I might want to do some increases to kind of get an A-line. Yeah. So my couple of my sweaters, I have that, that look or that that design, that construction, and I kind of like them. So I'm debating about that and trying to decide when I should do it. Because what's the total length is going to be? Oh, I think it's about 15. I think it's about 15. Okay. 15 or 16 before you do the ribbing. I think maybe 15. I think you should start soon. Probably, yeah. If I'm going if you're at approximately the halfway point, yeah, I probably should. If I think about my like from my underarm to my waist length, and then if I want it to go out from my hips, yeah, you're probably right. I should probably think about the increases after the rows I do during the show. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Well, that's a lot. Yeah, I've been busy. I have, and I'm on track to get going on my other project that's been languishing, which is the Sunny Bono cardigan. Cardigan, sweater, jacket, the Sunny Bono jacket. Because I did get more yarn while we were at Stitches, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. So I'm going to be able to start ticking things off my pattern page, which is always fun. By the way, since we are talking about pattern, or the project page,
Do you notice, and maybe I missed all of this, there probably was a discussion about it, but it no longer has a little WIP for your work in progress? And it used to be in the lower right-hand corner. It doesn't have that anymore.
I have it.
I'm looking at your page and you don't have it.
It says up in the upper right-hand corner of all my little pictures, it says WIP.
Okay.
It doesn't say that on yours?
Yeah, so I have WIPs and recent firsts listed. That's how I have it organized? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't say that. And it doesn't say it on mine either. What have I done wrong?
So over on the far right, where all the little icons are.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Which icon? I have this view as thumbnails selected. What do you have?
I have view as thumbnails.
Oh, huh. Yeah, my little thumbnails say
Let me try
WIP.
these other ones and see. Oh, no, wait a minute. I checked something else. I checked the second. Okay, there's 4 little icons, and I did the second from the left, and now I have my WIPs.
Okay, so if you view as large photos, I just changed mine. When you say view as large photos, you don't see the little WIP.
Ah,
and then if you view as thumbnails, you see the little mark that says it's a WIP. So do you ever not like to look at your page and see so many things are WIPs?
No, I never feel that way.
Oh, but I was just going to say, if you did feel that way, like, oh my God, I have too many WIPs, you should just change the view and look at them.
No, I was like, I want
large photos, and then you don't see if they're finished or not.
No, it doesn't bother me that but I like to have the WIP showing, and now I'm glad this is back. I clicked on the large photos, picture and got rid, and so I like this because I like to see my progress, and so I can see, I like to see my progress. I mean, I know you can see your progress, that they're finished, but I like having the WIPs because I know it's really clear just looking at the page what's done and what's not done.
Yeah, you can keep track of it. So the only...
I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful that the date when I started it is not showing.
Yeah, if you look at it, let's see. If you pick the third choice, which is a list. I think it's called View by List or something. Oh, yeah.
Then it's got it by...
Then you have it by date. You have the date right there in the first column. When is it started? Mm-hmm. That doesn't... I don't have any that are old, really old. My Sonny Bono jacket is the oldest one because that was started last February at Stitches.
My oldest in progress is from May 3rd, 2018.
Okay. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Now I do have some hibernating things. I have a doily that I put in hibernation from last January. I have some hibernating projects that's what I do when I get tired of looking at something and feel bad that it's been on my WIPs list for so long. I put it in hibernation so I don't have to look at it. So, but the only other thing I have in progress, I also worked on a little bit at Stitches, but I didn't put on the show notes to talk about, and that's my gradient shawl, the Dewdrops shawl. So, that's a crochet project. It'll be on the hook for a while. It's slower, much slower.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
All right.
So, Kelly, we have to talk about Stitches West.
Oh, my gosh, yes. Of course we do.
Yeah.
It's one of the most fun things of every year, Stitches West.
Where should we start? You know what I think where we should start is let's talk about the people we met, the listeners that we met.
Okay. Well, so we were walking through the market, which... is always fun. And we met Janet. She came up to say hi to us, which is great because we don't know what all of you look like. But you know what we look like, sort of. And you know what we sound like. Anyway, she found us and she came up to say hi. And so we got to meet her. She's from, Janet's from San Diego. So she had come all the way up to Stitches from San Diego. And I was just so glad that she stopped us and was able to say hi, and we were able to talk, and we met her, and it was fun. It's always fun to put faces to our listeners. One of the most fun things. I mean, we see a lot of people that we've already met when we go to Stitches, but this year we met a couple of new people, so that was fun. So,
Yeah.
and then the other person that we met was Chris, Meeting Knitter on Ravelry. And she and I had a couple of different conversations on Ravelry. And she lives in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area. And so I thought, have I met her before? I don't think I've met her before, but maybe, I'll see her at Stitches. And it turned out she was going. And so, so Chris came to the meetup on Saturday, and we were able to talk with her. So that was really fun.
And then also we met Alyssa, but we had met Alyssa before.
Yeah.
Aurora Rose Creates. And we got to talk with her.
Yeah, and she brought us goodies. She brought me some saddles, chicken saddles for my chickens. For the time of for the time when they're molting. Okay, Nash is barking. I don't know why.
Well, and Alyssa gave me stitch markers that have a dog theme. So there's like little dog bones and a dog dish and little dog paw shape and yeah.
And I have a pin on my bag now, a little chicken pin on my bag that she gave me with a little doghouse stitch marker. So anyway, it was great to meet to meet up with Alyssa and get to see her and then it was fun to see all the people that we know from Knockers that we've seen at Stitches. It was really fun on, was it Thursday night when we first got there? I think it was Thursday night that we were able to have dinner with Gail and Charlene from the Yarniacs.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That was really, really fun. I have not laughed that hard in a really long time.
Yes.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, that was good. That was good fun. Yeah. We've been to the retreat and we've met them at the meetup, but it's been a number of years that we've said, "Oh, we need to actually sit down and talk together," and we hadn't done it. So it was good to have a chance to sit and have dinner with them and chat kind of in a more quiet setting than that. So, and then there were a couple of people who were at the Stitches that we didn't get to meet up with. Kapani, Stephanie, who is in our group, she was there on Friday when we had our class, the day we had our class. She was there on Friday, but we didn't end up running into her or her running into us. So, but I know she was there, and there were a few other people from our Ravelry group who were at Stitches that we didn't manage to see. But it's such a fun event. I don't know. There's just something really fun about being in a place where everyone there is there for the same exact reason, and everybody's there having a good time. Like the fun quotient is just really high. It's in the air. You can just feel it in the air that everybody's there for fun. So
and it's not awkward to talk to people you don't know because you have this. You start out like, "Oh, I love your sweater. What's the pattern?" Or
what are you knitting?
Yeah. Can I touch you?
I need to pet your sweater.
What we call the knitter's handshake. Let me pet that sweater.
Yeah, so, it is. It's really it's really an easy way to be around people, even for someone like me who is not so good at social situations.
But we did take a class, and we took one of the market classes, and it was on Tunisian crochet, and it was taught by Cindy Craig. And in the show notes, we'll put a video about the technique if you don't know about Tunisian crochet. What did you think, Kelly? I liked it. Do you think you'd ever make anything out of Tunisian crochet?
I do. She mentioned Kim Guzman has some videos and some patterns, videos on YouTube and some free patterns. So I think I'll go look at that. And then also Twinset Ellen has a Tunisian crochet mitts pattern that I think I might check out. And honestly, I haven't put Tunisian crochet into the Ravelry search engine, so I think I might do that once I get myself unpacked and feel like I have some time to play around, I'll go on to Rambouillet and search around in the Tunisian crochet, because I think I would like to make something in Tunisian crochet. It was interesting. I don't know, I don't know how much I'll do of it, but I would like to do something.
Yeah. I also, in the show notes, I'll have there's a Wikipedia article about Tunisian crochet, which I put a link to that. But it's basically, with a crochet, with what we think of crochet is it's just you have one working stitch, right? Mm-hmm. This one, and I think the number of stitches you put on, that's another whole discussion, because you end up, what we did is we cast on, I think, 25 stitches. Mm-hmm. And then what you do is you do basically a single crochet in each stitch across from right to left, and then you come back across, and so then all those 25 stitches are on your crochet hook, and you have a special long crochet hook. Then from left to right, you do I want to say a yarn over. That's not it. What do you call it in crochet when you do when you wrap the yarn?
They call it yarn over. Mm-hmm.
Oh, they do call it yarn over? I took the class, Kelly. How come I don't remember? But you do a yarn over, and then you pull that yarn through 2 stitches. You now have one working stitch, and then you do another yarn over, pull it through the working stitch, and the next stitch on the needle, yarn over, and continue. So then you're sort of like casting off, so to speak.
Right.
And the interesting thing is that first row, when you're pulling a single crochet through the loops, when you get you're going from right to left, when you get to the left and you look back at those stitches, you kind of have like a hole between each stitch.
Yeah, it's kind of a holy fabric at that point.
Right. Then when you start working back, you sort of fill in that hole. This is what we noticed. And so when you look at the fabric, it on the right side, it doesn't look exactly like stockinette, but it's more like a knitted fabric than a crocheted fabric. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And then when you flip it over and you look at the reverse side, it looks like reverse stockinette. Mm-hmm. Very much.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. Right? Very interesting product. I think we did ask, like, well, it's a lot of, if you were doing a large project, that would be a lot of stitches to hold on your crochet hook. And so Cindy was saying that sometimes people, the way they make Afghans is they cast on a certain number of stitches. What am I trying to say? They make sort of like strips.
Right.
That then they sew together to make the Afghan.
And I remember we had lunch with my mom. She was another person that we met up with at Stitches.
Yes. Yes.
My mom and Dennis.
But we can't talk about her because she's not a listener.
Right. So we met up with my mom and Dennis and had lunch after our class. And she was reminding me that they called it an Afghan crochet hook, and that she had done some Afghan projects when I was younger with that very stitch. But I don't remember if it was in strips. I think it was. I think she did strips. It was one of those kinds of projects. She also did hairpin lace, which actually made strips, and then you sewed the strips together to make the blanket. Yeah. So I think the Tunisian crochet or the Afghan crochet was also something that she did in strips, but I actually don't remember specifically her doing that. Yeah.
The other thing I would say about the needles that we had were weren't they Knitter's Pride or something like that? I think they were Knitter's Pride. So you had the crochet hook, which was kind of long, but then you could attach it to one of the cables.
Right.
So you wouldn't have to have 100 stitches on that little needle. It would be strung out along that line.
Right.
So that might make it easier.
Have more stitches, yeah.
Yeah. But I was wondering how the weight would work, But you have weight on your knitting needles too.
If you're doing a big project like that, you do have weight on your knitting needles for sure.
Yeah.
I think I think it will be interesting to look through the project or look through the pattern pages and see what kinds of patterns there are available for Tunisian crochet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, well, I would like to do something, and I would like to see kind of what the versatility of it is. The fabric is really nice, really firm and solid. Mm-hmm. So like mitts would be perfect. Mm-hmm. You know, wind wouldn't go through. They're not holey. You wouldn't have a lot of wind going through them. Yeah. It would be nice, a nice fabric for a good pair of walking mitts. So I think that might be what I do first, but I am open to looking at other projects and seeing what else could be done with Tunisian crochet.
Yeah.
It was a cool technique. And I have to say, I really like the market classes. Mm-hmm. I've only taken the one all-day class. That was the Argyle. And it was really good. Nothing against it. But once you commit a day of stitches to a class, then you don't have, that day is taken up and you don't have that time to do other things. So I like the market classes from the standpoint that it's only an hour. It's cheap. I mean, really, $25 for a market class, I thought was a good value. Mm-hmm. And you also get entry into all the day's market. So even the Thursday preview market, you get entry into with your market class. So it's, I think, totally worth it. Yeah. To sign up for a market class. And they're easier to get into. They don't fill up as fast. And I took one on double knitting last year. I took one on entrelac and one on knitting backwards. One year I took both of those classes when I was there. Mm-hmm. And there was one other one that I took, and one other year that I took a market class, and I can't remember now what it was. But, there, you just get a little taste of a technique. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I could highly recommend them. I think they're really good value and fun. So,
well, that's a nice segue to the marketplace.
Yeah.
Talking about marketplace classes. So the marketplace was nice. It was very good this year. We missed some people. Were not there. Some vendors who had been there in years past were not there. But we walked the marketplace sort of looking for trends. Mm-hmm. And we did talk to a lot of the vendors, and it was sort of the consensus was, because we asked, sort of what are the popular colors? What are people buying the most of? And I was surprised by this, but yellow and orange.
Yeah, I was too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I have to say, when we had dinner or got together and for the podcasters meetup on Saturday, and Tracy from the two Knitlit chicks, she had bought. Yeah, she was wearing yellow and orange, and she had bought yellow and orange. So she confirms what we were told.
Yeah, and she said that people all weekend had been, because she wears a lot of orange, and she said people had been stopping her to ask her about the sweater that she was wearing that day, and had been talking to her about other things she was wearing that were in that color. So, it's gotten to be a popular color.
And then the other color we noticed was popular was the kind of I'm calling it dusky burgundy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What would you call that color, Kelly? You were attracted to it all weekend,
I think burgundy. I would just, fall colors. I mean, I guess what I would describe as what was popular, and this is similar to previous years, I think, previous, like the last year or maybe the year before, but last year for sure, I noticed even though it's spring, the colors that were out were what I would consider to be fall colors. Mm-hmm. And I remember I think it was last year that the night shift or the shift cowl, the Andrea Mowry, that pattern was so popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that pattern is in those colors. And so we saw those colors everywhere. Green, like fall green and burgundy and gold and golden orange. And I think this year was the same, only there was more of the yellow and orange, the gold and orange colors. Mm-hmm. I like that burgundy. One of the vendors that we talked to said, that that people were coming by and saying, "Oh yeah, this is everywhere," but that it wasn't actually selling the way that it had in the past.
But I wanted to mention a couple of the booths that we really liked and we're interested in. So, and I don't know if this is in any particular order, but we did stop by a booth that was selling linen yarn, and it's called Baltic Linen Designs. And then there's two companies together, also the Yarn Dynamic, and there's links to all of these in the show notes. But nice conversation with Dennis, who I think he's the owner of Baltic Linen Designs, and talking about linen and that it's all spun in Lithuania.
Their yarn.
Their yarn is spun in Lithuania, the linen. This was interesting to learn that they used to grow linen in Lithuania. Say that again, Lithuania. But because of the European Union, they have said that all linen has to be grown in France. So their market has sort of disappeared, and the linen is now, all their linen is coming from France, but it's all processed and spun in Lithuania.
Okay, so different countries have specialized. Mm-hmm. So Lithuania specializes in the spinning, and France in the growing. That's interesting.
And then he was talking about the spinning process because, that's my holiday thing. It's, when I travel is visiting mills, and which makes sense that the preparation and the spinning is going to be, the concept is 100% the same, but the size is different because he said staple on wool is at the maximum probably 6 inches.
Right. And especially for a mill. I mean, long wool, a mill who can take a Wensleydale is rare, right? That a really long Wensleydale, that's not gonna be the typical yarn that a mill processes.
Right.
So
where linen fibers are 18, 24 inches long. I mean, they're really, really long, or even longer.
Didn't he say like in France the staple length might be close to a meter or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
So he was interesting to talk to, and there's all of his, and they're also, let me just finish that thought. All of their yarns are available on their website. They also have other yarns too that they're experimenting, combining linen with wool. Mm-hmm. And I think didn't he have some with alpaca? Too? So that was just interesting to me when people are trying to take something that's traditionally one way, but let's try reinventing it in another way.
Yeah. And also he said that kind of their mission at Stitches was to make knitters aware of linen as a possibility for knitting. And I mean, I feel like we already know that, but we talk about knitting with linen, but it isn't something that everybody knits with.
Yeah, we like knitting with linen, and I know one of the, in fact, he had information about this topic is that many people feel that it's hard on your hands, it's too rough or something, and so they actually had a shawl there that you could buy the kit, but they had not washed the shawl to show people what it feels like before it's washed, and so I've not found it to be a problem knitting with linen. Because it is different. It's a little stiffer, but I like it. Yeah. It doesn't bother my hands at all. But the other important thing to point out about linen is we have to first say that processing any yarn, there's an environmental impact of processing wool or linen or any kind of material.
Right.
But processing bamboo and what's the other one that people use? Tencel. Tencel. I always pronounce it the wrong way. Those are really bad. I don't really know
how to pronounce it.
Yeah. Okay. But those are really bad for the environment.
Yeah.
And so the processing of linen is less of an impact on the environment than processing some of these other so-called natural fibers.
Well, and like the fiber shed is working with linen, and I mean, it can be a totally natural process to process linen. The retting of linen is can be done by the weather.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know that that's how it's done everywhere, but that retting process is just a matter of leaving the fibers out to, experience the moisture in the air and the dew and rot kind of naturally.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is a really natural fiber with a really, a processing method that can be really natural.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's something really natural about the feel of the fabric too, especially once it's kind of broken in a little bit.
And it gets better with age.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention also Loop Fiber Studio. And we had bought, I think it was 2 years ago. She
might have
was
been
at
even
the
longer
show.
than that. Yeah.
Okay. And she was at the show with her bats. These beautiful, it was like
Bumps.
a wall of these
Blue
beautiful bumps. Thank you. Bumps. Beautiful wall of these bumps. And we each bought one. And so she did not have her bumps there this year because, as she said, it's not really a spinner show. It's a knitter crocheter show. And, which we understand. And then also it's difficult they had everything shipped out, and it's difficult to ship the bumps because they take up a lot of space, but they are all air. It's just, it's a management issue. So, but I wanted to give a shout out to her. She had a really nice yarn. And if you are interested in the bumps, they are available on her Etsy site. And there's a link to the site in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so I just looked in my Ravelry page. 2017.
Oh, okay.
Is when I spun it. So I'm guessing I got it in February of 2017. Yeah.
Okay. And what was fun too is that you are working on the what's the name of your shawl now?
Dewdrops shawl.
Yes, you're working on that, and you brought it, and it's what you had spun out of the bump that you bought, and so it was really fun. We brought it by the booth to show them, what you had made, and she was I think vendors really like to see what people make out of the yarn or their fiber.
Yeah, I know. 1 year I had made that poncho from the Sincere Sheep. And I went to her booth, and I felt sort of embarrassed, sort of like reluctant to go up to her and say, "Look what I made from your yarn." But I did, and it was well appreciated. I was like, okay, I feel a little uncomfortable doing this, but I'm going to because I really like this, and I want you to see what I made with your yarn. And then when I went up to her and showed her, she was really appreciative. So I do think that people really like seeing what other people make with their yarn. And I mean, I like seeing your shawl that you're making with the yarn that I dyed, right?
Yeah.
So
we've had people, when people have purchased yarn through our shop, and then they've posted pictures of what they made, and it's really fun to see.
It is
really
fun to see.
So.
Yeah.
And then another a booth that we really liked was the Royal Bee Yarn Company. She had very nice things, and
natural dyed yarn that was the yarn of her that's specific to her yarn shop. But one of these days, I'm going to do my own personal yarn crawl. I should let people know, because people in the area might like to join me on this personal yarn crawl. But I would like to go to the Swift Stitch, and there's one other one in Santa Cruz, which I can't remember the name of. So I'd like to do those two. I guess I could start at Monarch, because that's in Pacific Grove. Go up to Santa Cruz, look at the two shops at Santa Cruz, go on to Half Moon Bay to Fengari. And then continue on to Pacifica, which is where the Royal Bee is, and then turn around and come home. I think that would be really fun. And now that I've seen the yarn, some of the yarn from her shop, I'm really even more inspired to do that yarn crawl that ends up at the Royal Bee. I think it would be really fun. Nice little Highway 1 yarn crawl.
Yeah, I'll come down for that.
Okay. I was just thinking I have spring break coming. Maybe I'll do it at spring break.
Oh, yeah, do it at spring break. I don't need to come. Okay, so then the other booth we liked was Redfish Dye Works.
Mm-hmm.
And she has beautiful colors.
Yes.
Beautiful patterns.
Yes.
Unbelievably fine Fair Isle style, patterns.
Well, and I want to work through enough of my weaving stash, my spirit yarn weaving stash, that I feel okay about buying some Redfish Dye Works yarn from Elf, because she has the most beautiful silks. Mm-hmm. I mean, just gorgeous silks. And I would like to I would like to weave with more silk yarn than I currently do. But I also have a lot of destashed cotton that I have to go through before I get to that point.
Yeah.
So, but that was really nice. A really nice booth.
Well, and we did not buy very much yarn on this marketplace because we have lots that we need to work through. So we really didn't buy very much. But we did each buy a skein of lace weight silk at Redfish Dye Works. And because I was intrigued with socks, there was a sample there. She was showing us of socks that she'd made out of the lace weight silk. And so we each bought a skein, and she gave us a pattern to make socks. You do it on 000s. Ouch. And I really mean ouch, because I have 000s that I bought to do the teeth of my skull. And I keep poking myself with those. They're very pointy and sharp and fine. So, but I was intrigued by those socks. And she was saying, because silk does not have any spring to it, that you cannot make just plain stockinette socks. You have to have something with a lace or a ribbing or something to allow for some stretch, to give it some stretch so you could get them on your foot.
Yeah. But I am really intrigued. I think silk socks sound like the height of luxury. And the wool silk socks that I have lasted forever. So I know that a pair of silk socks will really wear.
Yeah. Silk is very durable.
And it just seems so elegant. I'm wearing silk stockings. Yeah. We'll see how long it takes me to make them. But really affordable too. The one skein was only $17.50, and it doesn't take more than one skein to make them. So if you're willing to put in the stitches, the labor, the materials are actually not that expensive.
The label says it's 50. It's a 50 gram. I'm holding it here. I'm looking at it. It says it's a 50 gram skein, 420 yards, and it's actually a little more than that. But to play it safe, they put the smaller number on there.
So I'm kind of excited about trying those.
Yeah. Okay. Then we have to talk about the other booth that we went to, and that was Saraba.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Saraba African Art. I've looked all over. They do not have a website, so I can't refer you to that. But we'd walked by earlier, and I noticed I think they're always there. And I think they go to other festivals, and they always have these really interesting baskets. But this year, I saw, and Kelly, is it ICAT? Is that how it's pronounced? ECOT fabric. And you're the weaver, so you need to talk about this fabric just a little bit. I did put in the show notes, there's a link to the Wikipedia page talking about this, but you explain it, because
So ECOT, there's several, many cultures have a version of ECOT, but basically you wind the warp. The simplest version of describing it is the warp is wound, so, you do all that winding of the warp on the warping board or the warping reel or whatever. And then you take that warp and you dye it. And then the ECOT part of it is that you use resist. So you wrap a certain amount of, kind of like tie-dye in a way, but it comes out much more elegant than that. You wrap a certain amount of the warp, some warp threads, not all of them necessarily. some warp threads and some length of the warp threads you wrap, and then you dye the warp. And so you have sections of the warp threads that, in this case, it was indigo probably because it was blue. You have sections of the warp threads that are blue, and then sections that are white where they were wrapped and there was resist. And of course, the demarcation line is not firm, it's not straight because the threads are in different places, and so you have a little bit of a ragged edge on either side of the white. But it's really pretty, and I fell in love with one of those. So fabrics. We each bought some fabric, and you're going to make a skirt out of yours. Yeah, right? I am. I'm going to make it'll be a long skirt. They were so interesting, and then I think you have one that has this, and mine has this too. They have a very little section at the very end of the fabric that has little like blips where it's woven with wool, a really bright colored wool. So mostly it's blue and white. Mine is blue and white with some orange on the edges. Yeah. And they're woven in strips. And then the strips are zigzagged together. And it looks like the strips are maybe 4 inches wide, 4 or 5 inches wide. And then, a lot of times then like there's a little bit of a contrasting color where they're stitched together at the edges. Yeah. Like the selvages or something. Mine is orange on the edges. Yeah. But so that was actually it was actually very cool. I was very excited about that fabric when I saw it. Yeah. I got excited about it too. Yeah. So I have big plans for sewing. Well, I have a drawer full of fabric, my fabric collection. But I don't want this to just go into the drawer and never get made into anything. This is definitely going to become a skirt that I'll wear this spring. Actually, it could go with this T-shirt that I'm making because the body of the T-shirt, my T-shirt is blue, kind of denim-y blue color. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll take one of mine and make, because I bought 2, so maybe I'll make one of mine into a skirt too, and we can be matching. That would be fun. Yeah. Not that we'd go that many places together that we would actually be able to wear our matching skirts, but. So we are going to talk about the other booth we wanted to talk about is Apple Fiber Studio. But before we talk about that, I just wanted to mention at lunch one day, we had, there's a group of us this is the cool thing about Stitches, a group of us that all kind of know each other, ended up having lunch together. It's sort of a free form thing. The table just it was one size and then more people come and we had another table and it got bigger and bigger. But somebody brought their friend, and their friend is a man named Frank Jernigan, and he has a company called Franco Designs, and it's spelled PHRANKCO Designs, and there's a link in the show notes. And he was very interesting to talk to because he is a designer. He does 4 sweater designs a year for Cast On magazine. Oh, okay. Do you subscribe to that? No, and I need to. I really want to. That's the Knitting Guild of America or something. Yes. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, I was looking at it, and I think I'm going to pay to join, and so I can get the magazine. And they have it looks like, well, I can't really look at it because I'm not a member, but it sounds like they have lots of resources. Well, I mean, a lot of resources. I'm interested. I've talked before about this, but they're the group that have the Master Knitter program. Yes. So I'm interested in them from that perspective, and I haven't pulled the trigger on that, but I would at least like to do the Master Knitter one. I'm not sure I have the stamina to go all the way through the 3rd level, but I would at least like to do the Master Knitter level 1. And I think reading his biography, I think he is a Master Knitter. I think he's gone through the course, I think. So anyway, he does 4 sweaters a year, but on his website, he was telling me about this, and I went today and looked at his video. So if you go to his website, it's just franco.com, I believe. There's a video on there that shows about how his process works, but he's designed a method, and he said it's not really new. He just has taken it to another level, kind of, and he also has, well, I'll get to the next part. He's doing,
quote unquote set in sleeves, but they're not actually set in. He does designing top down sweaters that are all done in the round. And you can make what looks like a set in sleeve, but so you have that structure and shaping of a set in sleeve, but it's not an actual set in sleeve that you actually have to sew in. Because a lot of many knitters don't do set in sleeves because they are challenging to put in to get a nice. I mean, I've done it, and it's a challenge to get that nice line. So that's the first thing, is he's done a technique, and then you can go to his website and you put in all your measurements, and sort of like Amy Herzog's site, where you can put in all of your measurements, and then the yarn that you're going to be using, the gauge, the needle size, and then you say, what ease you want on the sweater, and it will print out the pattern for you for a price. I think it's like $6, I think.
Nice.
And you get the pattern with these, I don't know, I'm going to call them mock set-in sleeves. And so that's really interesting. So if you want, go check out his website, watch the video. And I did not get a chance to watch the whole video, but there's another video. Do you remember a couple of years ago at Stitches, I met Suzanne Bryan, who has a YouTube channel?
Yes.
Well,
I remember talking with her.
Yes. And she also is a master knitter. And I've been watching some of her videos, and she's really good. So like, for example, blocking sweaters. Now I realize how I was doing it was not horrible, but it's not the best way to wash and block a sweater. So I followed her video, and that's how I'm doing it now. So she does some really good tutorials. Mm-hmm. She has another channel called Off the Cuff, and his video is on that. And so there's a link to the interview that she has done with Frank.
All right.
And that's interesting. And I, as I say, I didn't get to watch the whole thing. I watched just the beginning of it, but I put the link in there. So I thought it was really interesting to, and he is designing mostly men's sweaters. And we did have a conversation at lunch about men's sweaters. And it seems like there's far more women's sweaters out there that are interesting and unusual designs, and a little bit harder to find men's sweaters that are, stylish.
Right.
Kind of. And he said, and he was talking too about how he is designing men's sweaters, and how most men want before listeners get upset, I want to say I'm speaking in gross generalizations. Okay. Mm-hmm. But typically men want more subdued colors,
right?
Gray, navy, maybe a burgundy. And so he was talking about, when he's designing his sweaters, how to introduce a bit more flair and style, but still keeping it relatively conservative for men. Mm-hmm. And maybe introduce a little bit of color, or if not color, introduce patterning. Because he said, for example, men would never wear a sweater with lace details on it. Mm-hmm. But how can you incorporate some of the concepts behind patterning of lace into a men's sweater, but still have it masculine?
Oh, interesting.
So interesting conversation with him. And so I just wanted to let people know that, and check out his website. And then also, if you are if you're a subscriber to Cast On, you can see his pattern designs there too.
Okay.
So then our last booth we wanted to talk about that is Apple Fiber Studio, and they're located in Bellingham, Washington, and they had a booth.
You had to come all the way down here to see them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so they have a new yarn line that is being featured at Stitches. So Cosmic Crisp is their yarn line.
And do you want to know why it's called Cosmic Crisp?
Yeah, I do. I didn't know.
Because it's Apple Fiber Studio, all of their yarns are named after apples.
Okay. Is that an apple?
And, Cosmic Crisp is a new apple that I believe, if I understand, it was developed by, I think, Washington State University, their agriculture department, and it's been years in the works, and they're now available in the market. And so it's supposed to be an eating apple. Mm-hmm. And so it's supposed to be, sweet but tart and crisp all at the same time. And the cosmic, why do I know this stuff? But I know this stuff. The cosmic comes from the fact that the skin is red, but it has all these little white dots all over it that look sort of like the stars or the Milky Way. Yeah.
Okay. I will have to include that in the Ravelry thread that I open, a little picture of the cosmic crisp apple, now that I know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so she, Andrea from Apple Fiber Studio, she donated a skein of yarn for us to give away. So we have a skein of the Cosmic Crisp. It's in the colorway Aurora Borealis, which is very pretty. It's blues and greens, pale blue to dark teal to kind of a foresty green color. It's a really pretty colorway. And so this yarn is fingering weight. It is an 80% superwash BFL, 20% nylon. So one of the sock yarns that I love the most is BFL. And so this is one of those. It's got 400 yards in a 100 gram skein. And of course it's washable. You'll appreciate this, Marsha. The label says it's micro brewed in Bellingham, Washington, sourced and spun in South America. And then it has the website. So she gave us the skein, and because the skein is in sort of earthy colors, Aurora Borealis, we got a project bag that is the earth with flowers and lions and cats and penguins and polar bears and trees and birds and a fishing cat and a goose, all on the earth. So a little project bag and a little skein of yarn that are matching from Apple Fiber Studio. So we're going to be opening a thread in our Ravelry group, and we'll have some prompt that has you go look at their website, the Apple Fiber Studio website, and answer some question. Because we'd really love to have you take a look at her shop, and then we'll draw a prize. In our first April episode, we'll draw the prize. So that will give you all of March to go browse through her shop and respond to the thread.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Andrea, for giving us that.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So we have a chance to give away a skein.
So until next year.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but before we go,
like
I'm about ready to say goodbye.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I'm moving on now from Stitches West, and I just have a little bit of housekeeping. So when I was talking about my Iceland trip, and we had a teacher, Janine Bages, on the trip. And I kept saying Behus. I thought the J was pronounced that way. Anyway, the thing about it is I was laughing is I knew her last name because I had seen it in writing, but the day that we met everybody that first morning and everybody introduced themselves, they just introduced themselves by their first name. And if they were on Ravelry, who they were on Ravelry. And so then I ended up knowing everybody's last names from the email thread. But I never heard them pronounced. And so at Stitches, several people corrected me, which I appreciate. I do appreciate it because, and even my knitting group that I get together here in Seattle corrected me that I had it incorrect. So Janine, if you ever listen to this podcast, I apologize for mispronouncing your name. So it's Bages.
Janine Bages.
Janine Bages. So my housekeeping.
Well, and I have some housekeeping too.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So I wanted to recognize Rogue Bat on Ravelry. Her name is really Shannon, and she sent us a message. And so she said she really enjoyed the podcast and loves hearing about Marsha's travels and my bees. And she's a beekeeper, so who just became a beekeeper last March. So I thought I just wanted to give a shout out to Shannon. Thank you for the feedback. She's not on Ravelry very much, and so I just wanted to make sure that I gave a shout out on the podcast. Thank you for the feedback. We love getting emails from people, and you can comment or give us feedback on our website. There's a contact us page that you can use, or you can email to 2use@2usefiberadventures.com. So thank you, Shannon, for the response, and then also. There have been some people who have commented on Podbean, and I'm seriously delinquent, I guess is what I should say. So here's the deal. I have a Podbean account, but when I tried to claim my podcast on Podbean, I ended up just making a separate Podbean account. So for some reason, I'm not associated with the Two Use Fiber Adventures in the Podbean directory. I just have a separate Podbean account. So I don't get messages about the comments. So if you're on Podbean and you comment, I hope you don't take offense that I don't see your comments. I have to go actually searching for them. So I did go searching, and we had a comment from Gamer Mom 628. Remember when you did the afterthought heel? And you were having such a hard time about your afterthought heel. So she said her first and last experience with the afterthought heel was traumatizing. So kind of like
I can understand.
Yeah, kind of like you said about yours. And then we also have had a couple of different comments from Nooch.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second, because she said her last sentence is at moments like that, I thank heaven for bourbon.
Yes, thank heaven for bourbon. That's true. That's very true.
And I'm just going to add, too, about those afterthought heel socks. My brother wears them because I gave them to him. That's why I was making them. And he had them on the other night. So he wears them. So
Oh, good. But, so Gamer Mom, we feel your pain.
Yeah.
And then the other comments that I've seen are from Nooch KS. And she's commented a couple of times. Once was quite a long while ago. She's from Canada, and then once more recently. But anyway, she was talking about my dewdrop shawl. And so, and a lot of people commented about this. I said I hated the row where I had to double crochet into all the chain stitches of this chain 5. And a lot of people said just double crochet into the loop that the chain 5 makes, which I could do. I actually could do that. That's an option. But the pattern does actually call for double crocheting into each one of the chain stitches. So you get like a slit in the pattern instead of like a shell. So so she did say that I could double crochet into the loops. And she said she loves her podcast and has listened to all of the episodes. Thank you so much, Nooch KS. And I'm sorry that I didn't see your response. I didn't see your response sooner. So, yeah. And she spent the last few weeks, she says she spent the last few weeks listening to your podcast from oldest to newest episodes. I always am so humbled when people say that they binge listened to the podcast and listened from the beginning back to where we are now. Like, that is just so nice to hear. So those were comments from Podbean. And then finally, there was a comment from Yarn Girl 52, Debbie. Remember when you had the question about, do designers always use the yarn that they say, and are their pictures always the yarn that they say the project is out of? And basically from her response, no rules exist. As for the pictures on the pattern page, no rules exist. Sometimes a designer will see an FO and request to use the photo. This has happened to me twice. The last time, I didn't even use the same weight of yarn. So when you look at the pictures on the project page, you might be a little careful, because they might not be pictures from the yarn that was called for in the pattern, or even the same weight of yarn that was called for in the pattern. So, but she does say that some designers use a specific yarn and other yarns won't really work well. So anyway, that's an answer to your question. So thanks, Debbie, for that. We appreciate the information.
Feedback. Yeah. We learn stuff all the time.
I know. So one thing we didn't mention, Marsha, was before we even went to Stitches, we went to a yarn shop.
Oh, right. I have it in my notes,
Yes.
but we didn't even mention it. Oh my gosh. Okay, yes.
We were so in need of yarn that we actually stopped at a yarn shop before we went to Stitches.
Yeah. So we stopped in San Jose. There's a yarn shop it's now called Fillery Yarns. And there's a link in the show notes. It used to be Green Planet Yarns, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it's the only yarn shop in San Jose.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
And but I wanted to go there because Andrea Haas owns the shop. She bought it and renamed it, and she was on my Iceland trip. So I wanted to go by and see the shop. She has a very nice shop.
Yeah. It was super busy too.
Very busy. Yeah.
There were a lot of people there.
And I don't think you bought anything. I bought they're like little clips.
Oh, right. For
holding seams together, or the infamous set-in sleeves to hold your sleeves sort of in place when you stitch it. Now maybe I won't need them, but anyway, I bought that, and I bought something else. Oh, I know what I bought. Remember the little plastic thing that you put on your finger to keep your yarn separate when you're doing color work?
Yes, so you're all ready for your colorwork sweater.
Yeah, so I don't know how well it works, but I'm going to give it a try.
Sounds good.
So... But just a little shout out to Andrea. She was great on the trip, a lot of fun. And I have to say she's got a really, really nice yarn shop.
Yeah, we were sorry she wasn't there when we stopped in. But
yeah.
We had a good time looking through the shop.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Okay, now is that it?
Yeah, this is a long episode, everyone. I'm sorry, but I had a lot of pent-up things to say. If you don't let me on the show for 2 episodes, this is what happens.
I have to tell you one other little thing, too, as I've been sitting here knitting on another project that I never even mentioned. Oh. But I'm not going to talk about it now.
Oh, okay.
This will be the suspense.
Okay.
I'll talk about it next week.
Sounds good.
Or, I mean, not next week, but next episode, I'll talk about it. Yeah.
All right.
So, Kelly, I think with that, we will say goodbye.
Yes. Goodbye.
All right. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening. To subscribe to the podcast, visit 2usfiberadventures.com.
Join us on our adventures on Ravelry and Instagram. I am Better in Motion, and Kelly is 100 Projects.
Until next time, we're the 2 U's
doing our part for World Fleece.